enjoyed having an opportunity to listen to Congressman Barr and Congressman Comer. I missed old Silver here. We've been together for a long time, and I think you may or may not know that Hal is on the cusp here of becoming the longest-serving member of the U.S. House from Kentucky in history, and has done a fabulous job all along the way. Join me in congratulating him. And I want to give a shout out to Congressman Comer. You know, the biggest new thing in the Farm Bill was industrial hemp. Before it became cool to be an advocate for industrial hemp, Jamie Comer was promoting that back when he was Commissioner of Agriculture, sort of on the ground floor before that took off, and has done a fabulous job. And I also enjoyed listening to Andy Barr's description of the new challenges we have with the far left up here, which I'll touch on again briefly. Some of you may recall I'm frequently asked what being the majority leader of the Senate is like. The best answer I've been able to come up with is it's a little bit like being the groundskeeper at a cemetery. Everybody's under you, but nobody's listening. So what is it the majority leader gets to do? The most significant advantage I have over the other 99 senators is I get to make a decision about what we're going to do. I don't always guarantee the outcome, but at least you get to determine what the agenda is going to be. And sometimes a decision to not do something becomes extraordinarily significant. And the single most consequential decision I've made in my time as majority leader was the decision not to fill the vacancy created by the death of Justice Scalia. And that opened up the opportunity, since that vacancy occurred during the presidential year, to let the American people decide who they wanted to make that appointment. And that led, of course, to the appointment of Justice Gorsuch. And, of course, we've had a second opportunity with the retirement of Anthony Kennedy to appoint Justice Brett Kavanaugh. If you look at America today, so much of what goes on is determined in the court system. And people like myself and those of like mine have often felt that the job of a judge is not to make it up, but to follow the law. Justice Scalia used to say, if you want to make policy, why don't you run for Congress? That's not our job. And so the president has done a spectacular job of picking what we call strict constructionists, those who believe the job of a judge is to call the balls and strikes, not to be a participant in the game. And we've now confirmed, as of today, there will be 31 new U.S. Circuit Court judges. That's one step below the Supreme Court. And most complex litigation makes it to the Supreme Court. So we have a stake in this, a long-term stake in this. The president's been sending up men and women who are young, who are strict constructionists, who are going to be there for a long, long time and have a huge impact on what kind of country we're going to have. And so that has given me the opportunity to have a significant impact on the future of the country. I would also mention that of the 4 leaders in Congress right now, I'm the only one that's not from New York or California. And so I think I have a special role in looking out for middle America and rural and small town America. Because, as you can imagine, these big, heavily populated states on the coast have a lot of clout. In the House, they have a lot of members. In the Senate, they have the Democratic leader. So what I try to do all along the way is to look out for middle America and, in particular, Kentucky. And so a quick look back at the last Congress, where my party had control of both chambers. That doesn't happen very often if you're a Republican. For those of you who are not political junkies, you can go back 100 years, and my party has only had control of the presidency, the House, and the Senate 20 of the 100 years, just 20. Our Democratic friends have had a period of great dominance during the Great Depression with the New Deal, during the Great Society with LBJ, during the first few years of Barack Obama, massive majorities, and the White House. They could pretty much do what they wanted to during those periods, and they did. So I woke up the next day, seized with the opportunity we'd been given that was fairly rare to have all three, and I said to myself, boy, let's don't waste any time because you don't know how long this is going to last. Sure enough, it only lasted 2 years, and we're back to divided government. So did we take advantage of it? I think we did. 2 Supreme Court justices, 30 Circuit Court justices. We got rid of onerous regulations like waters of the United States. We repealed a whole lot of other Obama-era regulations that were slowing the growth of the country. And we did comprehensive tax reform. And one aspect of tax reform that I had always wanted to get rid of entirely is the death tax. Well, we almost got rid of it. There's now an $11 million per person exemption before it kicks in, indexed to inflation. That will eliminate at least most of Kentucky's small businesses and family farms from the estate tax altogether, making it easier to get it down to the next generation. And I saved the Farm Bill to last. This is my hemp pen. I don't have to remind everybody what a diverse crop this is. I guess back in Henry Clay's day, they just made rope out of it. But now we know a lot more about it. It's got incredible potential in so many different ways. It could end up in your car dashboard, it could be on your pen, could be in medicine, could be in food, a remarkably diverse product. The challenge we had a few years ago was to try to distinguish it from its rather controversial cousin, which took a little work, but once people figured out this was an entirely different plant, then the question was, how do you move it forward? Well, this was an advantage that I had, being the majority leader, to try to give Kentucky an opportunity to punch above its weight. So I asked the chairman of the Agriculture Committee in the Senate to put the legalization of industrial hemp in the Farm Bill so that when it came out of committee, it was already in the bill. In the Senate, it's harder to get something in on the floor than it is if it's already in the bill coming out of committee. I have been on the Agriculture Committee myself since the day I was sworn into the Senate. So even though I don't do a lot of committee work anymore because of my leadership position, I show up occasionally when it's important. And I showed up. It made it across the floor. Then the way you pass a bill in the end, some of you know, is you have conferees appointed on each side. In other words, some members get together and work out the differences. Industrial hemp was not in the House version. So I put myself on the conference. How about that? Just to make sure that it made it across the finish line. And it did make it across the finish line, and we have now taken industrial hemp out of the Controlled Substances Act, and business is popping up all over Kentucky. I went out to visit a fellow in Harrison County who was growing hemp, thinking I was just going to look at the farm. Turned out he's also in the processing business, and the CEO of the processing business was there, and I said, where are you from? And he said, Australia. Australia. So I think we're on the cutting edge here of something that could be very significant for our state. Younger farmers are taking a look at it. Some of the older farmers are taking a look at it. There are not any price supports. It's going to be a free market activity. You're eligible for crop insurance. But if you want to take a shot at it, do. Because I've learned there are a number of very serious investors from other states investing in Kentucky operations. And so I think that's a new opportunity for us to do things that we haven't done in the past in Kentucky and give us an opportunity for new income. Hal and I have been there during the transition away from tobacco. We're still growing it, it's just not so many people. But it was an inevitable transition, And I think the buyout at least gave people an opportunity to get compensated for the asset that had been created on your farm by the government back in the 30s when, interestingly enough, Alvin Barkley was Majority Leader of the Senate. So we've come full swing from Barkley to McConnell, from tobacco over, hopefully, to hemp to give us a great future in a new area. I want to touch on one other thing before I leave. Congressman Barr was talking about the threat we have today, and everybody focuses on this young congresswoman from New York because she's honestly particularly bizarre. But I want to tell you, it's not all a laughing matter. I'm going to shock you a little bit. I know many of you are registered Democrats. That's a forgivable sin, by the way. But here's the Democratic Party in America today. I see Brett Guthrie back there too, by the way, who's another one of the all-stars in our congressional delegation. Brett. The 40% of the Democrats in 2016 who voted in the presidential primaries self-identified as socialists. They think of themselves as socialists. When Hal Rogers and I were young, you didn't want to be called a socialist. This was not a good thing. It was a serious pejorative term. 40% self-identifying as socialists? I saw a poll the other day that indicated a majority of people who identify as Democrats, whether they're voting in primaries or not, think socialism is better than capitalism. Think about that. You can understand during the Great Depression Americans being tempted to adopt that kind of philosophy. The Great Depression was a hell of a problem. America today, we have the lowest unemployment in 50 years. Now, I know things haven't been great in farm country the last 2 years, but America overall, the economy is doing quite well. What is the temptation here? America isn't broken, it doesn't need fixing. And as the president pointed out, let's look at some socialist countries around the world. The one making the most news these days is Venezuela. So I think the threat here is a pretty serious thing. In most of my political career, I think the battles have been fought out, if you're familiar with football, almost everyone is, been fought out between the 40-yard lines. When the Democrats are up, you move a little bit to the left. When the Republicans are up, you move a little bit to the right. We've never had a serious debate about whether America ought to be a capitalist country. So look, it's easy to laugh about the young congresswoman from New York, but there are an awful lot of Americans who think things like the Green New Deal, which Andy described in great and amusing detail. By the way, one of the advantages I mentioned to be a majority leader, I get to decide what we're going to do. So Hal, you might be interested. No, we're going to have a vote on the Green New Deal. We're going to have a vote on it. It's going to be fun to watch them. Will they vote present in order to try to avoid it altogether? Will they vote yes? I think some of the presidential candidates will. Or will a few of them vote no? They're in agony over this vote. Absolute agony. Speaking of the ability to schedule, yesterday we had a vote. You may have followed these bizarre debates in Virginia and New York about abortion in the third trimester. In the third trimester. Well, I scheduled a vote yesterday on a bill to address that issue. All but 3 Democrats voted against it. So look, I know this is not a partisan group, but what I want to leave you with is the notion that your values are under serious attack by serious people in the Congress and in the country. We're going to have a fight next year about the future of America. We're going to have a referendum on what America ought to be like. And don't sit on the sideline. Don't sit on the sideline. Because this is the first time, I'll end with this, the first time in my career that I thought basic American system was up for debate. And it is. So there couldn't be a more important thing to leave behind for our children and grandchildren than the kind of America that we've built here for 200 years, which is an opportunity society. It's not a guaranteed outcome in this country, but you have a guaranteed opportunity to go as far as your talents will allow you. That's the essence of this country. And we don't ever, ever want to lose that. Thank you all so much.